Will Terra Luna survive? That is the question. Welcome back to Anti-Hedge, guys. Today we're going to be talking about the Luna fiasco and giving our opinion on it. One thing I do got to say though is if you like this kind of content, you should subscribe and stay up to date with the crypto verse as it's unfolding. But one thing I do got to say is this is not financial advice and we don't accept liabilities for the loss that you might incur. It's strictly news and research. So with that in mind, let's move on to the subject of this video. So let's look at some of the factors that made this Luna scenario happen the way it did, the way it unfolded, so to speak. So we're just going to start by looking at the founder, Quan. This guy is notoriously a hater on Twitter. He goes around bashing other people, bashing followers, bashing people for being poor, bashing billionaires, and instigating an attack on his network. We'll show you some of the strings of tweets in this video, and we'll leave them in our sources just so you can see what we're talking about. But for the most part, the guy has a pretty distasteful attitude. That's one key factor of what happened. Another thing too that I wanted to mention is that the whole concept of an algorithmic stablecoin is a Ponzi. It's a Ponzi scheme. The whole idea of having 20% APY on a stablecoin is kind of crazy. It's almost too good to be true. And generally in crypto, when things are too good to be true, they usually are. That's one of the things that I do have to say is the fact that algorithmic stablecoins have consistently failed. There hasn't been any real successful applications. And one of the things that's very interesting about Quan was that he actually created an algorithmic stablecoin years ago named Basis. And that didn't work out so well either, which is an interesting fact that a lot of people don't know. Quan was likely involved in this collusion towards Luna. And that's where we're going to step into the next part, which is talking more about the bug or the hack or the attack. I'd like to just call it a straight up rug, and we'll get into the details now. One of the things that caused it in a nutshell that I've read through threads and speculations was that more or less what happened was that malicious actors with a lot of money exploited a bug within the Luna network. And they did this by basically drawing liquidity from their liquidity pool of UST, the Terra, their stable coin, and then bringing down their liquidity in that pool. Then after they drain that liquidity, what ends up happening now is Bitcoin starts to take a tumble, right? So when Bitcoin starts to take a tumble, because Luna is backed by Bitcoin, which is a volatile asset at the time of recording this video, it got heavily affected by Bitcoin's drop. So Bitcoin's 25% drop already, with the fact that the draining of the liquidity had dropped the peg a few pennies, which isn't a big deal. It happens. There's micro swings like that on a lot of stable coins. It's actually kind of normal-ish. But the problem was that the series of events that caused it. So liquidity gets drained from the pool. The peg drops a few cents, which is natural. But then Bitcoin drops 25%. And now this becomes something complicated because Bitcoin dropping 25% means that an asset that is backed by Bitcoin has to drop because it's backed by Bitcoin. So then what ended up happening there was that caused the peg to destable further. And once it destabled further, that caused a snowball effect, which was really, really volatile. Because then what ends up happening is Quan is forced to sell the Bitcoin off to defend the peg, buying back UST. And then what ends up happening is once you start selling the Bitcoin that's backing your treasury, it becomes a parabolic fall because they're directly pegged to each other. So it's actually the perfect storm. It's the perfect way to put it, because how that ended up happening was really insane when you think about it. And then once people lose confidence in a peg that's dropped over 20%, people start rushing to take their money out. And the thing is right there, that just drains whatever liquidity there is in the Luna treasury, causing the peg to fall further. Meaning that the peg itself cannot survive now because the treasury had to be sold to maintain the asset. Meaning that that's a Ponzi scheme. That's a rug. It's very much a rug. One of the things that people don't realize is that bug caused the inflation rate of Luna to pop off and hit like 6 or 7 billion tokens, which caused extreme dilution to the price, making something that was worth tens of billions of dollars worth nothing in comparison to the money it had before. And that right there was a huge shock, because a lot of people lost a lot of their money in that. The result of that depegging ended up basically a parabolic drop and death for Luna. And now people in the community are calling for some form of action to happen to Terra. But before we get into that, I would just like to go into the possible list of people that could have colluded to do it. So who did it? We're going to ask ourselves now. People have mentioned in threads that it could be BlackRock or Citadel that did it in an attempt to destabilize the market and make a lot of money, potentially even opening up a short position. People have also mentioned Gemini and Binance, which in my opinion is possible. It's possible they might have done that. They might have colluded to take people's Bitcoin. And one of the last people that I thought of was Justin Sun. And this is something that it's extremely likely, because Justin Sun put out a tweet saying, "I'm buying UST," with the big eyes emoji, meaning that he's up to something. And then Do Kwon responded, "What are you doing, Your Excellency?" And this was just before the crash initiated. So it's almost like Justin Sun was giving a precursor. After looking at some of the factors that were involved in this whole thing, I think that it's not just a hack or a bug and collusion. It's all of the above. This was a coordinated rug, the more that I look at it. And recently too, one of the things that I noticed after reading articles, and I'll post them in the description for you guys, was that the Bitcoin that was taken out of the treasury settled on two major exchanges, Binance and Gemini. And both those platforms halted trading of Luna. So it's interesting to think that the some 100,000 Bitcoin that was stacked away in the Luna treasury ended up almost 50,000 in Binance and 50,000 in Gemini. It's almost like this alt was a coordinated rug to take your Bitcoin. And this is something that Max Kaiser's repeated many times, is that most altcoins are there to take your Bitcoin. Very scary. One of the reasons too why I'm going to tie this whole thing together as a coordinated collusion, because at first I was watching this and I thought that they just did it out of malice towards Kwon. But recently I read an article in the International Business Times that mentioned that Terra Labs actually dissolved before the crash, meaning that he understood that this was coming. So whether or not he was in on it or not, I can't tell you. It's likely, considering that he was talking to Justin Sun. All I could say is that he knew that this was coming. He dissolved the company, meaning that you couldn't take legal action on a dissolved company. And that further cements that Kwon is a rug master. We've talked about who did it, but now we're going to mention why they did it. And why they did it is because people definitely took short positions on Luna. A lot of people took short positions. And the thing is when there's enough interest in a short position, people are going to crash the market to make that money. And that's clearly what happened. Someone shorted Luna from $100 to $0 and made a fucking killing. And that wasn't just random people. That was people that were coordinated on that. That wasn't just one person. That was groups of people. And that's why I think that some of these actors actually did have something to do with it, with Kwon. I think it was collusion from all of them. What ends up happening is they siphon the Bitcoin from the treasury and from the people at that point, because they actually believed in the project, and they're the losers. And then all these exchanges get more Bitcoin in their liquidity pools, like in their own personal ones. And the other thing too is probably just to break Luna and destroy the stablecoin in general, just for their own personal benefit, to knock out competition, as well as to potentially further regulation of stablecoins. This might have been the martyr that they put on the spike, just so that they could take the step towards regulating a stablecoin. Going on to the next part. What's next for Luna? What happens now? Because a lot of people are in limbo as to what's going to happen. There's two scenarios that are happening. The first one was that it just dies and it's nowhere to be seen and it will never really recover, and it'll just kind of be Terra Classic. The second scenario that they've been talking about is a burn or a swap, and it's finally been, like, not official but announced, like, that is kind of in the works, is that they're working on Luna 2.0 and trying to see if whether or not that could work. And I see a lot of investors very hopeful because they want it to succeed for themselves, and I get that. They just lost a lot of money. A lot of people got hurt on Luna. A lot of people got burnt. It's very likely. It's very sad because they're the ones that lost their money, not the billionaires. And then what ends up happening from here is they want it to succeed. They'll stay for the project. They're belted in. Personally, if Luna 2.0 happens, it's probably going to be another rug to get people in, to be like, oh, hey, look, this crypto's trusted again. They're going to try to reestablish trust so that they could get one more big rug pull in before they disappear. Because it doesn't look good when the founder dissolves the company that holds Terra together and then is saying, oh, we're going to do Luna 2.0. So what's he going to do? Start a new company? Terra Labs 2.0? And then what? Create the same concept? No one's going to trust it. No one should trust it. And that's my opinion of it. The guy is a shiller. He's a scammer. He's a rug puller. Not someone that you want to be going around to on the project. And for the people that are speculative, by all means, you could, because I can't tell you what to do. No one can tell you what to do. It's not financial advice, right? But you could buy in at this price and say, hey, I'm doing it just for shits and giggles, like a gamble. But understand that buying Luna at this price is a gamble. It's way more risk than it is anything else, reward. And if it hits, fine, it hits. I could be wrong. Hell, I even put 40 bucks when it hit the floor just so I could say, hey, all right, let's see what happens. I'm not hopeful for it. I threw that $40 away just so I could say I did it, because I've seen stupider plays in crypto play out, and at this point, there should be a rule. If you think that it's ridiculous enough to hype, put in 20, 30 bucks. Maybe it'll go 10x and you could happily sell it for a very small amount of money that you're going to put in, but nothing more than that. And that's why I want to end this on an advisory to say this. Never put more than you're willing to lose, ever. Don't over leverage yourself. It's not worth it, because if you lose your money, you're going to feel horrible and you're going to be starting back at zero. And a lot of people after this Luna scam, they got screwed to the point where they're not going to be okay after. People have lost their homes, and I've seen subreddits of support groups. And if you're one of those people, by all means, go check out some of those groups. Coming from me, be careful if there is a Luna 2.0. Don't over leverage yourself on that project, because you don't know what's going to happen to it. They've already proven that they don't even know what could happen to it. And last but not least, if you stayed till the end of this video, we appreciate your viewership so much. Thank you so much for watching us through this process of growing, and definitely stick around because we're working on more things to bring to you. Take care, guys.